So we must do two things, two great things together to encompass that enormous new view that lies before us, but to encompass it within the framework of science, to see it within the whole categorical framework of science, and to see that these two are not separate, but that they are wedded. The bigness of the idea, the newness of the idea, the greatness of it is one with the structure of science, the structure of being itself. So we were talking about the sciences and how the sciences have been changing, and I came across this morning a quote from Rupert Sheldrake that I'm quite sure that I have shared with you before, but it is absolutely befitting what we were talking about yesterday. And he says, the final cause of the whole universe for Aristotle was God. You see what we were saying, that these early scientists had such a reverence, such a love for the divine, and a sense that everything they did was being led by the divine and should be in the service of God. And so he says the final cause of the whole universe for Aristotle was God. God was the prime mover of the universe, not because he pushed it, but because, in a sense, he pulled it. He attracted the universe toward himself. And there's a sense in which final causes, purposes, and goals have this kind of attractive quality. Just remember that what we have been seeing over the years recently, that sense of love having all to do with attractors, and setting a goal that has sub-goals within it, and sub-sub-goals, and sub-sub-goals. So Sheldrake says there's a sense in which final causes, purposes, and goals have this kind of attractive quality. They draw things toward them. And so love is that which has set these attractors. Nestedness is another idea that comes to mind, that love is all to do with nestedness. We see that in the design of being here, that we've tried to illustrate that these levels are not separate and watertight and, unrelated to each other, but they are nested. You see that Christian Science and absolute Christian Science are nested in divine science. And divine science, in turn, is nested in science itself. So this sense of nestedness, this is the way love works. And love will nest its attractors. It has one great overall plan, and when that overall plan is adapted, say, to our experience, to our life, there is a goal. Love sets a goal. There's a plan in which there is a goal, and the goal is reached through the nestedness of the attractors in that plan, in that field of the plan, so that we can see that those 1,000-year periods, which are really the pattern for the development of each one of us, the development of consciousness universally, collectively, and individually, that within that pattern are many, many different attractors that have been set. So you have one great overall attractor, which is the goal itself, to reach the fulfillment, the climax, conclusion of the 7,000-year period consciousness within us. But all along that way, you have sub-attractors. You have an attractor in mind. You have an attractor, therefore, in that first 1,000-year period that a goal had been set for the first 1,000-year period to achieve something, to accomplish something, to reach something, to fulfill the requirements and the parameters of something. Namely, what mind needs to do in order to kick off that evolution, to get that evolution started. And then you would see that this is how the pattern is patterned. You see that there's one deep pattern, and then this pattern is scaled. Now I come in with this beautiful concept of pattern across scale, which is the way love works, because love wants to show the same pattern forth everywhere. It wants to universalize that pattern. And so a pattern is not something that exists just at one scale or another, but across every scale. Every scale. That's why if we understand and can see those 7,000-year periods clearly, we will understand that they are the pattern for every scale of consciousness. For the universal scale of consciousness, for the collective scale of consciousness, for the individual scale of consciousness. And so when we come to the individual scale, we see that we have not just one individual scale, but we have the individualizing of that scale to every individual consciousness, so that every individual consciousness is patterned with the same pattern, but that is adapted to the individual scale of consciousness. So it indicates that something is working. It's really love. Something is working that is bringing about changes, but that it itself does not change. Because if you look at your individual lives, you don't all have the same individual life, do you? The surface structure is very different. It's absolutely unique. And yet, at the deep structure of consciousness, we find that there is but one pattern that has been scaled individually by the Christ to you, by the love of the Christ. The Christ within divine love has scaled that pattern of love, that plan of love, to you specifically. And it shows us really that love is totally involved with us, totally involved universally and individually. So you get the whole vast range, the whole scale really of being is covered by love and love's total involvement to bring that pattern and establish that pattern in everything. So love sees and is seeing to it that there is only one pattern everywhere. And we said that, for instance, in mind, whereas that one goal, the one attractor that is set at the conclusion of the evolution is love's goal, but that all along the way there are goals which are attractors that prevent that we ever really can go off of that track, off of that course. It's love's course. So everything is preset, the attractors are preset in mind to ensure that you fulfill the requirements of that first 1,000-year period. Isn't that beautiful? That you learn all the lessons that mind has to teach you. They're all, so to say, encompassed within, held within, implied within mind. Because of the way the attractors are set and placed and related to each other, we can't miss learning what mind has to teach us, what the first 1,000-year period has to teach us. And then we would see that once that attractor, that final attractor in mind has been fulfilled. And we know that really that first day of creation, you see, we have to go back to that first day of creation, and we see that there are 3 subtones there. Mind is spirit, mind is soul. So you have sub-attractors. You have a sub-attractor set in mind is mind, that you fulfill everything that mind is mind has to teach you, to show you how mind as mind is shaping you and forming you into the same likeness, into the likeness of the pattern, you see. Scaling you according to the pattern. Scaling, that would be the way love would describe forming you, shaping you, molding you according to the pattern of mind is mind. When that's fulfilled, what knows that? We don't know when that's fulfilled. We don't know when to move on to mind as spirit. It doesn't work that way. It's in consciousness. It's built in consciousness. It's the Christ that knows. When is there an absolute coincidence with the requirements, the constituency of mind as mind? As soon as that is established, that coincidence between God and man, which is what the Christ is in control of and overseeing, that then immediately we move into the field of mind as spirit, fulfill those requirements, fulfill the attractor in that field, are one with it, and move on to mind as soul. And we have the minimum there, the minimum number of subtones, just what is necessary to fulfill the generative process that is going on, the generating of something, the creating of something within us through those 7. So we have 3 subtones, and then in spirit we have 3 subtones, and in soul 5, in principle 5, in the 5th day 4, in the 6th day 7, and in the 7th day 2. And all along that course of the 29 subtones are set the attractors that enable us. We don't, out of our own works, fulfill that. It's love guiding that course, leading that course through attractors. And then we would see that actually there's also something else at work, and that's the calculus in those 7. So we have really what I had originally intended to speak to you about this week, the 4 built into the 7. I say built into the 7. Actually, the 7 are built into the 4. The 7 are nested within the fourfold operation of the calculus. What makes that 7-fold evolution move, what makes those 7 days move, is the calculus. The movement of God. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters, the face of the deep. And so you see that from your study material, actually, I believe it's on the last page of your study material, and the page prior to the study material as a whole for this class, the classroom material I'm speaking of. That, yes, that's it in the previous page. It may be, yes, you see that? There you have the layout according to John W. Dorley of the 7 days of creation with their 29 subtones. And you see that those 29 subtones are further nested into the calculus. They are calculus nested, and that means that there is a word aspect to that evolution, to that development, to that unfoldment. There is a Christ aspect to it. The Christianity aspect and a science aspect. And so that you see that to show you what we call the breaks in that whole evolution, that we have 4 great aspects, and that indicates 3 breaks in the whole evolution of consciousness according to the calculus. So the consciousness is evolving in accord with, in the rhythm of the calculus. And it begins with the word sense of the word. So we're always looking at the word. The days of creation are in the word order. The second record is in the word order. The 1,000-year periods are in the word order. Our evolution of consciousness is in the word order. And so we see that nested within the word is the word as the word as the Christ, the word as Christianity, and the word as science. And that first sense of the word being nested within the word is showing us something primal about that development, that evolution of consciousness, something fundamental, something initial, and that is the primal creativity. The primal creativity of the calculus to initiate that evolution, that we are given the primal elements of our evolution of consciousness when we look at mind as mind, all the way through soul as spirit. Soul as spirit. These are the primal elements of creativity. And then we see that there's actually an attractor in that field. There's an attractor in the field of the word as the word that draws us through that development and that evolution. So the word sets its first attractor at the point of the word as the word. Love sets an attractor, you see, at the point of the word as the word, fulfills the requirements, primal creativity, the initial starting and the first developments of that evolution in consciousness. And then we come to really the fulfilling of the requirements of that field of the word as the word. So the attractor has been reached, the goal has been reached. There's a coincidence, the Christ checks. The Christ is always that which is checking to ensure that everything is lined up with, the same as, coincident with the word. And in this case, the word as the word. And then we see that the word as the Christ has set a new attractor, a new goal. And that is to fulfill the requirements of the word as the Christ. And so the word as the Christ are those subtones which are covering soul as soul. You feel it definitely when you go through the text, that the Christ suddenly breaks in with this sense of identity, with the sense of the seed within itself, and takes us on in the development up to the point of life as spirit. And what is fulfilled there, the attractor in that field, is to set forth the abundant translation of the word as the Christ, the abundant translation of that seed within itself. When that is fulfilled, then we see that there is a new attractor that is set. It's the attractor of the word as Christianity. And there we see that the subtones that cover that field are life as soul, all the way to truth as principle. And this is a field in which we begin to see the infinite multiplication and dominion of being, the dominion of man. It takes us right up to a sense of dominion, not quite fully through the full presentation of what man is in the sixth day, but up to the point of dominion. And so the attractor is set to fulfill that, such that finally the final attractor, which is the main attractor in the whole field of the word order, is set. The whole field of the word order from the standpoint of the calculus, that attractor is set as the word as science. And so the standpoint of science breaks in, and you have that field being displayed, being set forth, being shown forth and fulfilled in the subtones from truth as life to love as love. And so this is the field that shows us the wholeness and the completion and the infinity of being. So you see that the calculus within which the seven are nested also have their attractors, so that there is no possibility that we cannot succeed. There's no possibility that we can fail because of this goal-setting ability of love and the ability to keep us on the track. Some further quotes from Peter Kirstenbaum. It is the future that pulls rather than the past that pushes. Some traditional views of man interpret the present as determined by the past. These views hold that present events or problems are the workings out of early programming. Maturity becomes the resolution of childhood conflicts. You see, we so often do that. We think about what we are right now as being the result of what came before, in that mortal record, in that second record belief, the belief of there being another record of creation. What he says, an alternative interpretation of the situation is that we outgrow, generally overcome, a problem, and reliance on the past is based on a mistaken analysis of the structure of consciousness. Isn't that profound? Reliance on the past is based on a mistaken analysis of the structure of consciousness. Genuine growth is the experience of being pulled or attracted by a goal in the future. Yeah.
Could you say that one more time?
Yeah. About from genuine growth, genuine, or the whole. Okay. Reliance on the past is based on a mistaken analysis of the structure of consciousness. So what do we have? We have a true analysis of the structure of consciousness, don't we, in the science of being, a true analysis of it. So he goes on and says, genuine growth is the experience of being pulled or attracted by a goal in the future. That's really, he says, what Aristotle meant by his final cause, or telos, not being pushed into action, but being drawn and attracted by a future goal, something that is already set for us.